Got 2 houses. And really close to the water, which is bad, but they're grandfathered, obviously, you know the score. So,
There's not a lot of room to be not close.
yeah, very true.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
I'm thinking at least 6 figures.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I would imagine.
But just to clarify, Bridget, I have to be finished by noon on Saturday, not started.
Yeah, none of our games can
Yeah.
start before.
Yeah, so
That's
yeah,
the
so
end.
yeah, so I definitely can't make it this Saturday.
Okay.
But yeah,
That's fine, because like I said, it's
Yeah.
cardigan, and she was apparently out last week.
Yeah.
She wanted to have it this past Saturday, and I said, our team's just started, and that's not fair. He'll have maybe 4 or 5 practices under his belt. I don't
oh,
think
we
should do
hadn't
that.
even had that many.
Yeah,
We had 2
Is that your older son or younger?
younger.
It's fun to watch the kids play that.
I've always enjoyed watching, like as I've coached, kids who have never touched a volleyball.
Yeah.
Really, even those that have.
Yeah,
So as an example, but it takes like 4 weeks
The blue chairs multiply.
before it finally seems like it has started to click in, and you feel like a broken record until that time. Even after I felt like a broken record, but
Yeah,
every
first
year.
time they pass, or well, not volleyball, but- or set
Well,
somebody up, it's
no.
like, oh my God, they listen.
I had one that I swear all season was like, wait, what? Like, where have you been? We're 5 weeks in. We have 1 week left. I've been saying this all season. It's just,
Another thing to consider, Bridget, we actually have a large enough team that we could just split them into 2 teams and play ourselves.
you can, okay,
Like we have so many kids. that-
yeah,
Like I'm not gonna invite every kid to the games.
okay.
I mean, every kid will get invited to games, but we're not bringing the whole team to individual games, because they'll only play like, I calculated out, like they'll get like 6 minutes is all.
Oh, that's good to
Because
know.
that's how many, we have so many,
How many do you have?
16,
How many court?
5.
Five?
It's way too big.
I did not play.
But so we can easily just play games on ourselves with 8v8,
Okay,
and that would work very well, which is what we're gonna do at some point anyway.
yeah, this is kind of a good idea because, or keep that in
Nice
mind.
job on the
Lebanon
chairs.
has, I think it was Lebanon has 2 boys teams.
Yeah.
Like some of the other groups have 2 boys teams.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I have 1 and 2 girls teams. So,
Yeah.
Big difference in the aluminum chairs,
Well-
I gotta tell you.
so that was the hard part to try to finagle, but if,
Copies of things.
I do.
Well,
I
like,
have you
we're
guys
not,
playing
like
twice,
with
you
Lebanon
can
having
just-
2 teams, we're probably can only play their lesser team.
oh, so CCB,
Yeah,
that I did that for you.
Yeah.
Jamie did some
Yeah,
investigating and I
I thought-
told Ned which one we were gonna play against.
Yeah.
So that should work out fine.
Minutes.
But
Perfect.
yeah,
Are you?
Good.
yeah, so having
Yeah.
this size is, it makes it hard. Nobody,
I mean, that's,
I'll be happy when they're through.
yeah,
Get
that
rid
was
of
a
the
challenge
other
because we probably could have, we had a coach to split it into 8 and 8 instead of, because I know we didn't want to go over.
yeah,
Anybody else need agenda minutes? Lindsay, let's do the encumbrance budget stuff during the chair report.
Okay.
Sure.
I have it put on
I was gonna say,
spreadsheet.
you wasn't-
Yeah.
You wanna read off of that, or you can read off the email that you sent us? Actually, I changed it.
Still being. a
Okay,
little-
so
I had to
why don't
bring
you
it
read
down
this?
$100 to meet Rob started.
Okay. Why don't you just
That's
read
good.
it?
Okay.
Heels.
it's getting better each day it goes by. Relaxing.
I spent a lot of time. 2020. I am. It's the most comfortable position, but it was all, I started having like sciatica shooting down my legs, so. That's fine.
All right, I've got 6 o'clock, so we will go ahead and get started. Looks like I see a jacket where Maynard should be. Is that?
Oh, Maynard's not
Maynard's
coming,
not
that's my
coming.
jacket.
Yeah, he's out tonight.
He's got like today and I think 2 in January when he has something else coming up.
Oh, okay.
It's me tonight.
Okay.
I know Dan said he couldn't come.
Okay. Do we heard from Sealy or Phil?
Hadn't heard from either of those.
Do we have a quorum? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
Sealy's
6.
in
I guess
California or someplace.
I guess we do. We have 6 of us. So that gives us a quorum
Yes.
here,
You're talking, including Ashley?
including Ashley. Yes,
6 of you.
Yeah.
That is a quorum.
that is a quorum.
10 member
The people without the masks.
Right. All right, so we'll go ahead and get started, seeing as we have a quorum here. I don't know. So call this meeting to order, December 13th. We'll go ahead and we'll just do a quick attendance out loud. So I'll start with myself, Lindsay Smith. Well, let's go clockwise.
Okay, David Frack,
Bridget LeBree.
Brad Rip,
Eric Russell.
All of them in person, and then on via Zoom, we have
Ashley Wood.
great.
and our other people.
Oh, yes, and then we have also present, we've got
Rob Taylor staff.
Whitney Banker staff.
and
Brandy Saxton.
consultant. So, great. All right, so just a quick, did anyone have a chance to go over the agenda? Have anything to add, need to change anything around? Does it make sense? Very low, so I can't see. Okay, great. So we'll just follow that. Quick review and approval of the meeting minutes from 11:22. Did anyone have any substantial changes?
not substantial at all, but line 47, I think the first they should be the. And that's all I had.
Okay.
for The whole thing.
Anybody else have any substantive is what I meant to say, changes?
Make Motion to approve the minutes as corrected.
Second,
Okay. All in favor of accepting the minutes as corrected?
aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, all in favor, great. Moving right along, co-chair reports. So, David and I met with Barbara Jones. We've got some money that we need to figure out where to allocate to. So why don't you put it in
Okay.
a spreadsheet?
So according to our latest calculations, we have $4,320 that are not yet accounted for out of the money that was voted in May at the town meeting. As Lindsay said, she and I and Barbara Jones, who is our graphic designer / web guru person, met for a while yesterday afternoon or yesterday morning. And we decided how to spend the $4,300. So we want to get that information to you as task force members. And if there are any issues, suggestions for other ways to spend it, we would be happy to discuss that. Barbara will be doing website maintenance on a regular basis. And we budgeted $1,500 for that. Hosting the website is $100. Domain name registration is $20. All the various widgets and calendars and stuff that Lindsay knows about, I have absolutely not a clue. That's $100. We're thinking we will do another mailing at some point during 2022. And we will will also be doing some focus groups once we have these chapters in a good draft form. We'd like to invite people in, maybe have pizza or sandwiches or something like that. So we've come up with $1,100 for that. And that brings us to the grand total of $4,320. So if anybody wants to make other suggestions as to how we can rearrange this, speak now. It's actually probably going to be pretty flexible. But, you know, we wanted to bring everybody in on it, so. Need a formal motion, do you think, or just?
Don't think so. I guess my question for our budget committee member, or happens to be, it's just, we're just gonna put this plan, we have to select board, we don't have. to select
Yeah,
committee.
so the budget committee doesn't have anything.
That's
to
right.
do
We're,
with
so we need
the
to bring this,
expenditures, that's all through
Right.
Bob.
Yeah,
so we'll bring this to select board. We just wanted to be able to have a list showing how it's intended, not just saying, I mean, it is the first year, so they typically, you know, we didn't get money awarded to us until May. So,
Yeah, it's just basically,
unfortunately, town meeting schedule does not match up with the fiscal year. And because of COVID, it's off by a couple more months, which it makes it even more challenging. And because it's the first year, they tend to let things roll over correctly.
yeah, it's
or a
called
little
an
bit more
encumbrance. Basically,
encumbrance,
we
yeah.
can, because our fiscal year ends on December 31st,
Mhm.
For auditing purposes, the select board needs to have a vote before the end of the year to basically hold those funds in an account. They can continue to be available for us. We have obviously the contract with Brandy that covers the majority of the funds.
Mhm.
And the additional funds above 30,000. Minus some of the stuff that we spent this year.
Right.
We just need some paperwork, and David has delivered that to me, so I will hand that over to Lisa for vote at some next select board meeting on Monday night, next week, a week from tonight.
Okay.
And
Do we need to have a presence there next Monday night for any reasons?
I wouldn't think so. No,
Okay.
it's like I said, it's funding that's been approved
Mhm.
from the town meeting. And we just need basically paperwork. They need to be able to prove to the auditors that we are going to spend it for what we said we were going to spend it. So I think we've got that covered. I've forwarded Elisa the contract from Brandy, which covers the majority of it. The paperwork from David will cover the balance, basically.
so you're good with what I say?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Does that sound like a good breakdown to folks?
Yep.
Again, I think we just one more mailing that'll be strategic. And some focus group stuff, and then the rest is kind of maintenance. Barbara is giving us a 50% discount, so she's donating, you know, on her hourly rate. So that's kind of it's for her gift in kind is the way. But. Okay, great. Do we need to make a formal motion on this?
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
I think the minutes will reflect what you guys
Yeah.
have just said, so.
All right, moving right along. Welcome, Celie. So Celia,
Pardon me,
you want to announce your name as you
Celia Piero.
joined us? Great. All right, so we are going to go to the community-wide survey. And I am sorry, you all, I felt very sick, so I was not able to get to it at all. So, multiple sinus infections and ear infections. But I think we did reach our very amended target of 300.
Does that mean you take us to dinner?
No.
No.
It means we buy her a donut and coffee.
Okay, all right.
At Dunkin'.
Brandy, do you want to give us a little bit of just kind of an update on the survey or anything that you want to share with that?
Sure. So you actually have 315 responses as of 10 minutes before the meeting when I looked. So it's still open. And so one of the things I was looking for from you guys tonight is whether you do want to close it down, or do you want to leave it open for a bit longer? And if you want to leave it open for a bit longer, do you want me to wait on producing a report for you, or just go with a report with the 315 that we've got right now?
I
So
have,
series of if-then questions for you.
Randy, I have a few dozen of the paper copies that we've collected. I don't know how we
Okay.
want to handle those or how we get those inputted. I've got them in a
Mhm.
full. I've got, I did empty the boxes maybe a week or so ago. I'm gonna go retrieve the boxes once we say the survey is closed and we can gather the last few copies. But I've got, like I said, maybe a few dozen in my folder and on my desk, so I don't know what you want to do
Okay.
with
So
those.
how we handled those is there was a way to do a manual data entry into the SurveyMonkey thing. So we should do that before I produce the report because that sounds like it's enough of them to matter. So you and I should just coordinate a pickup opportunity once you've got the boxes in hand here in the next week.
I think it's been out long enough, don't you?
We told people we're gonna close it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we should close it.
I agree. I mean, there's not,
We close it tomorrow.
That's fine.
One person.
okay, we can close this part. Yeah, I mean, it's,
Do it.
unless we were gonna, again, we're running into holidays and unless we had a way to do it targeted and like, again, my hopes to like knock on doors, like I'm straight out until January, so, with work, so it's not, unless we had an actual, like, we're gonna really do a targeted plan, I think just leaving it open for general purposes isn't gonna do us any good, so I think we should close it as well. General,
Okay.
any other, so with that, so we'll get the paper copies over, and pick up the boxes and get all that returned, and as of tomorrow, I guess there's one person.
Yes, and one person that I'm gonna make do it if I have to hold her.
You want to say like who your mom is that person?
And I do hope that everybody on the task force has also filled it out. Because your voices matter as members of the community and you need to fill it out any way you want to. So please make sure that you have done it.
Can I ask a question? Yeah. What happens to all the stuff that we got at the charrette? Those and the that used part.
What happens to it all?
Yeah.
So we've
does that
been,
get combined with that?
yes, kind of. I mean, like we've kept it all. We have documented it. So Brandy, do you wanna, can you answer that a little bit or how that folds into the work that we're doing?
One of my recommendations would be to take the charrette. I think you've kind of done this to some extent. It may take a little bit more work to make it into a finished product, but you can basically just put up together a summary of the results from the charrette, and that can be an appendices or just some, more detailed information that someone could click into if they wanted to see and read through those results. So that's what I would do, and that's what I typically do with those types of results. So, likewise, as you go forward, when we have other public meetings, you may take notes and sort of include those as not directly in the main body of the plan, but as sort of supporting appendices type documents.
So I think, yeah, so the actual, like we can do an actual count and all those kinds of things, but they will be informing, I mean, because if we point to them saying, like these workshops informed this work, we
As long
should,
as people are aware, because I think it would make, if we didn't use it, it'd probably make them. upset.
yeah, and it's, some of that, like the stuff after town meeting was trying to get ourselves some ideas of like topics that were of interest. I mean, that's how a lot of that gets used. It's not every single
Uh-huh.
item, but if we have those PDFs and all that, that all goes in the archive of our supporting documents.
And so I assume other groups, but Brad and I certainly use the responses at those events in creating the information that we forwarded to Brandy.
Right.
Almost exclusively, right?
Right, I mean, the vast majority of what we put together for her
Yeah.
was directly from those events.
Absolutely.
So we need to make sure that we have a copy of all the PDFs or, where it's down in a readable form, not just pictures of the postcards. And so it may be a matter of sitting here and counting how many times people said Chico Museum.
And then my response to Brandy into the transportation included all of the raw data from that stuff. So she has it to look at, to compare it to what the survey says.
Yeah.
So try to come up with a consensus.
Yeah, so that's where, but yeah. All right, anything else on the community-wide survey? All right, well, we're gonna move on to the next stuff. New business. We've got two drafts of things to look at. So, and the first one is the visioning and guideposts that the visioning team and Brandy have put together. So,
Ooh.
let's go. I don't know. Before we jump in, I mean, I want comments and feedbacks, but Brandy, do you want to, is there anything that you want to say at the onset of this?
No, I think maybe how I would frame what's important about tonight, because this is sort of the first work session on plan content, is I'm looking to get a sense of the voice that you want this plan written in. And I always like to tell groups that I get better at ghostwriting for you over time, and the first couple of chapters are always a bit of a shot in the dark, to try to find what it is that you want. So in terms of the kind of feedback that's helpful, it's not only just specific content changes, but sort of more broadly, sort of format and tone thoughts as well are helpful, so that we can sort of get to a point where the written document it's got a consistent format and tone and reflects what it is you want that to be.
Brandy, this is Brad. I thought the tone was fine. I liked it. I thought it was an easy read. I thought that it was on target with what certainly what I was expecting. My only question was, we sort of touch on it a little bit in the vision and a little bit in the economic piece, but do we as a group want to include anything about addressing the fact that the last three census have showed a decline in population in Enfield, and that I think that that's a concern? And do we want to do anything about trying to attract more people to Enfield, or is it not appropriate in either one of these chapters? Just a question.
I think it's appropriate to talk about our population decline somewhere.
Yeah.
And I don't know what Randy has in mind for organizing all of the demographic statistical data about the town, but I kind of think that's where it should be.
Because it's certainly something that we need to attack head on, right?
I agree.
Because you can't have a town that's decreasing in population this significantly without repercussions.
Especially in a general area where the population
Is going
is
up.
increasing.
Right? So there's obviously an issue.
There's a disconnect.
There's a disconnect,
And I think-
something's happening, right?
I
And
think,
I think we
I
gotta,
think
you know,
something
fix it.
happened, but I don't think it's, I think we're getting more. I think the housing's being, selling like crazy. That's what the real estate
But
people say.
the population data out of the census,
Yeah, but you go on the fact.
but the last 30 years, Sealy, so like the 2020 showed
less than.
less than 2010, and 2010 showed less than 2000, and that's huge problem.
And it's brought up a lot in school budget committee
Yeah,
as well.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a conversation you can ask.
Because
Kylie, it gets talked
if you,
about.
if you
a lot.
start decreasing the population, you have less people paying taxes, which means you can't afford to do what you want to do in terms of helping the town. So
Would you,
Within the economic development chapter, one place to put that would be, if you're thinking about the SWOT, within the threats, the declining population
okay, yeah,
Yeah.
is a threat.
Yeah.
I do think overall the tone's good, and I know that you didn't necessarily write this, Brandy, but within the SWAT part, I don't think we want to necessarily name our neighboring town, by name as a threat. I don't think it reads well.
Are you on,
Oh,
so
hold
you're
on,
on the
let's get
economic development one right now?
Yeah,
Okay, so we can jump over to
Um,
that.
under the economic threats, I understand what we're saying. I just don't think that reads well when we say our neighbors are economic threats.
The town.
But there's going to be a way to say that, not being a favorite Upper Valley commuter location, which this goes in with the population decline that Brad's pointing out.
To address. So I'm wondering, I was just looking at kind of number 7 on the vision piece, and it talks about expanding the range of housing options available. And so maybe that's where,
To counteract the population
Yeah.
decline, maybe it's
Maybe
just a few
it's-
words there would. Because I think that we need to address it, certainly.
So
I'll say
I
different.
would say that the housing chapter is probably the more appropriate fit for fitting a little bit more of the demographics in. And then the other emphasis I would suggest is to not focus on the population number, but to focus on the household number and what's going on with that.
Yeah.
The population number is really just a reflection of broader population trends and the end of the echo baby boom as a bedroom community. Enfield, I'm sure, was a very popular location for families with children. And there's just a lot fewer families with children in the total population in the first instance. And so that cycle of demographics that you're seeing in Enfield isn't dissimilar to what's seen in other communities as well. And oftentimes the household numbers, I was just trying to find if you had in the data set you sent me, if you had looked at household numbers, the household numbers are often going up, even despite the population number going down, because households are becoming smaller.
I will say that though, the latest 2020 census data does show that relative to our neighboring communities, we are different. Something like 6 communities within the Upper Valley had declining populations. All of the others had increasing, and 4 of those were within the Mascoma Valley, including Enfield. So we were outliers as far as population goes between 2010 and 2020. Lebanon went up, Hanover went up, Grantham went up, Plainfield went up, Lyme went up, over and over. All these towns increased their population, our population went down. So while it may be true as far as broader trends statewide or nationwide, we were outliers within the very close communities to where we are. So I do think it's worth noting on the population side, because we are different than the communities that are right here.
I mean, if it were just one census that showed a drop, okay, maybe just at abnormality, but
Well, and if
3
all
in a
the
row.
communities did see a drop, that
Yeah.
would be one thing
that
too.
would- yeah,
But we are actually different from,
Yeah.
from the surrounding area. We
And-
saw a drop, other places saw an increase.
Right, and I think that's also, it's huge, if I look at the Mascoma district.
Yeah.
Because we have one of the lower tax rates in the 5 towns. So how are we attracting fewer with lower tax rates than the other towns? What is it that they're seeing, or, whatnot? And maybe it's just the price of the house is lower, who knows, but, you trade off.
Yeah.
But I'm just curious, yeah.
So yeah, I think that some of this type of investigation and framing of those issues will come into the housing chapter probably a little bit more than the economic development chapter.
Yeah, I'll do a little more looking at the surrounding towns, as I do have some of that information about the households already pulled. But one thing that I was just looking at is the housing stock and how many listings there were the past few years for Enfield. And so it might be helpful to do that also for certain specific towns around us to see even which ones had enough houses for sale, or homes for sale rather. that may have played a role.
Yeah, so there's a couple of factors to look into. So new housing construction is important, and then the turnover may give you some indication as well. I suspect you probably have a lot of, I haven't gotten into the demographics very deeply yet myself, so I'm just sort of suggesting this based on the type of community I see Enfield as being, is that you probably have a fair number of like houses that, you know, in 1995 had a family with children in it, maybe into and through the early 2000s, and now has two people in it. Um, and those two people aren't necessarily planning on going anywhere anytime soon. They like their house. It's all still working for them. And so understanding the sort of the demographic groupings that you've got, and the likelihood of people in that group moving and turning over their property, that then might have another younger family move in with children again, and then up that number. So that's one set of cycles. And then the other one is there new stock being added? If there isn't new stock being added, then you're not creating that opportunity for additional households to be moving in. So, and you know, there, I think that's an interesting point of comparison for you guys too, because the point that you're different than some of the surrounding communities, the communities you just listed out are a little bit more of the valley towns, and you are different geographically or geophysically, I guess you might say. You know, you've got less easily developable land, perhaps, than some of those other communities have. So that could be one of the interesting points as well. What kind of housing have those communities been adding in the last 10 years? I mean, my sense of it from living here is that probably a lot of that increase that you've seen, say, in Lebanon and Hanover, is all in large-scale multi-unit housing. So, you know, sort of getting a little more fine-grained with the inquiry might help uncover what's driving those numbers, to those big numbers, the population number that you're looking at, to go in the direction it's going.
I think we should definitely keep it in mind, and even so I remember with the conversation that I was having with for housing, but with Steve Schneider, and one of the things that, you know, he was commenting on after, you know, being a town manager for here, his work with Regional Planning Commission, and then the executive director or whatever for Eastman. But one of the comments that he made that really stuck out to me was generational, and being a generational community, and that builds core strength, you know, like that's foundation. And so when you have, like, you might have a family of 4 or 5 and the kids move out, but how do we get the kids to move back and start their families here? How do we make Enfield a community that's affordable? So one of the reasons that actually Hanover is not generational is that it's too expensive. But the kids who grow up there, even though they might go off to really good colleges, as young families typically cannot move back into Hanover to start their family, you know, as first-time home buyers or things like that. And that's a difference between just having that that core value, but also strength. And so maybe we have to think about, do we add a piece somewhere? Is this something that we've heard, or is this just something that we're noticing about, you know, the longevity of a town is kind of in generations too. You know, we have some old families here. Not a lot of them who have showed up to any of our meetings, you know, like, but how, you know, and the other thing that Steve was commenting on was like noticing how the composition of the town has changed from, it used to be about 50-50 people who've been here forever and lake residents, you know, like seasonal. And it shifted, and there's now kind of 3 categories between lake, people who've been here forever, and then people who have moved in. So there is actually, there's a little bit more diverse in that sense. But if it's, if we're looking at these core principles, thinking about generationality, you know, like
Has anybody talked to the building department about the number of building permits, the number of new houses we've had in 5 years, 10 years?
No.
I don't
That's
know.
that is information that will go definitely into the housing chapter. We will have that.
So, all right, so this is a good thing to keep in mind. Let's definitely not lose this, like, this idea and see how it starts to, but let's also go and look at the stuff that has been written. Remember, there's a lot of stuff that hasn't been, and there's still a lot of editing to do. So, but we definitely want to make note that, like, population change and or is it a priority of Enfield to continue to build a strong foundation? And what does that foundation occur or mean? You know, what does that consist of is what I mean, you know, so this to me is a foundational issue question. So maybe it does get into the guiding principles. Maybe we add another one. I don't know. These are not done yet, but let's take a look at the work that has been done and how did that, some of those things sit. So right now I'd like to specifically focus in on the vision. So let's put economic development aside for the moment and look at a little bit with, and again, we don't have to pick it apart word by word at this moment. But how did the mission, the vision statement, based off of remember the work that we did last time?
When was that sent? I'm just trying to find my copy.
So,
I don't think I got a copy of it.
no, I
I
know you and I got a copy and you and I are working with Randy on it. but I'm
I
not
sent
sure
it
that-
out to Rob to send to everybody, and he sent it on December 8th.
I
Yeah, you did. I got a
copy.
cop. I got a copy.
So I can send it right now if you want, but it's,
No, I should be able to find it.
yeah, December 8th. Oh, no, wait, that's
I
economic
like-
development chapter.
Oh, it's
Sorry.
Yeah,
okay.
I found-
Let me-
I got the economic development one. I can't find.
Rob
November
sent
24th.
to everybody on Wednesday, November
Yeah,
24th.
the 24th.
Right
Probably-
before
And
Thanksgiving.
it says,
Cookie turkey.
please, he didn't change the title. It says, please send to MPTF. If you want to look at that.
Is there an extra copy floating around now?
Got it.
Rob, can you print off a copy?
Okay.
Yes.
You can do that from your phone? Oh,
I can put it up on the big screen if you would like.
Boom.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah,
so
probably both.
I did get that mailing and I wrote a couple of responses. Did you get my response, Brandy?
I did. You brought up the point about, I don't know if is that visible up on the screen at this point?
Yep.
Okay.
Visible but not readable.
There we go.
There we go. We can at least make the big text, I think, visible. So you raised the point, David, about whether to rephrase the guiding
Yeah.
principles, in particularly into a sort of a less of a future tense and more of a present tense. The other thing I would say upon looking at, after we sent this out, I would sort of amplify off of your idea, is that we could probably do that by adding sort of a lead-in sentence and then getting rid of the duplicative repeating of Enfield will be a town that part, which is in every single one of those guiding principles that follow. So there's probably some opportunity there to tweak the wording and get that to be a little cleaner.
Okay, that sounds good.
So I think one of my questions for the group would be a process one as well. So whether you guys want to discuss chapters in the meetings like we're doing now, and then do the subcommittees want to go back and take those comments and sort of edit and then send me copies, or do you guys want me to do that and send them to you? Who wants to be the lead editor?
I would think, since you're learning how to ghostwrite for all of us, that if you do the editing, it's more likely to go into your voice than have it come back to you and have to have you put it into your voice
Okay.
second time. Does that make sense to everybody? I think I see heads nodding. Okay. So are you good with that, Brandy?
That's fine by me.
Okay.
Okay. So other than the David's comment about sort of reformatting those over to be more present tense, is there anything else in there that anyone saw that they want to talk through or raise as an issue or question? Okay.
Yeah, just
Oh, do we
a,
want to scroll so that Celia
um,
can see the?
can you scroll down so Celia can see it?
See the things over here. The text gets
Yeah.
even smaller, so we'll see what we can do.
So these ones, I mean, is there anything for folks that were reading through it that was glaringly out of place? Maybe that sometimes it's easier to go with the negative.
I thought they were pretty good.
I liked the tone. I liked the positivity.
The only question is, could we come up with a more Twitter version to be sort of crass about it, you know? I like it, and it's a good tone, but you know what I mean, like, is there a way to make it more sort of, there's actually a lot of text, is I guess what I'm getting at, you know?
You want these to be 240 characters or less.
Right, you know, is there a way, you know, to make it so that when somebody looks at it, it's just boom, 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 boom? You know, there's almost too, I don't know if there is or not, but there's almost too much for people to read, even in this one half a page of text. I don't know if that's true or not. But on the whole, I like them. I think they capture what we found, and they're great.
So one way to maybe help distill those, well, I've got two thoughts bounce into my mind that could be explored. One would be to try to highlight sort of the most important words in each of those blurbs that are the guiding principles. You know, with a more bold text or color or something like that. And the other would be to use some symbols, which, you know, sort of a little more like little icon type things to get across the main ideas in each of those blurbs. Could be another direction to go to try to, for people who are just glancing across the page, having them at least get a sense of the content.
I like highlighting. I hear what Eric is saying. I don't want to. There's finding this balance between too many words and then people not feeling included. You know, as we ran these sessions, and I was like, you know, people were like, oh, we didn't mention George's and we didn't say Jake's and we didn't, and I was like, okay, it's all stores. And they're like, but we didn't say this one. And I was like, oh, you know, like it almost, what ends up happening is that you have someone who goes, but you didn't actually specifically say us. So I like a bowl with some other words so that for those that really want to skim, you know, I mean,
So it sounds like a good approach.
that you get a little bit of that. And we will, I think, cleaning it up a little bit, because we did use, like, as we were writing this, I know my approach of writing these was I started with that phrase, Enfield will be.
I like that.
Enfield will be.
That's good.
You want to keep that, like, that repetitiveness?
I think so. I think it's I think repetition's good as
So-
far as like a starting phrase to me anyway. 'Cause it's like here's our principles and boom, you know.
So then the question is, and I think what David was saying is that the will be is future.
Yeah.
Do we say Enfield is? Because for whatever reason, folks get all uppity when they don't think that they're already doing the right things. You know, they want to be told that they are being really great, even if
Yeah,
there's
but
ways to
there's
go.
some
So
of
what if-
these that we're not there yet.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
And
Yeah.
it's gonna be obvious.
So
That is the point of the vision, but like, I feel like if people want to be told that you're, you know, I don't know.
What if you just cut it out and said a town that? Because then you're not necessarily saying we aren't doing it right now, but you're also saying that that's what we're going to be doing, or that's what we
So
should be
Enfield,
doing,
a
or-
town.
No, just take out Enfield, just a town. If we have an Enfield bit before that,
I understand what you're saying.
because that way it's just kind of, it is like a kind of finalized statement, and it's not pointing fingers. It's not poking holes in anything we're doing now, but it's also saying this is the future / path that continue. We're gonna keep doing it too. How's that?
yeah, you could also do something like Enfield will strive to be, you know, or will strive to actively protect, to honor, to reinforce, like that. So it doesn't suggest that you're not doing it now, but it doesn't also imply that you've already achieved this and you're just going to keep maintaining it.
Or it's Enfield strives, so that's an active present verb that also leads to the future. Like versus it's a less passive voice. Let me say that as most passively as I can. Enfield strives to be a town. Is that still missing the mark?
Or you could even just go Enfield strives to actively protect
Yeah,
our diverse natural resource. Enfield strives to
Yeah.
honor our unique history, like that.
Yeah,
Okay.
Celia's getting closer.
Getting closer.
That works.
Cindy,
and I think like
I'm
the
glad
first
that you
sentence is
made
the
notes
main
on it.
idea, and then we
Pull up-
leave
pull
the
up there.
supporting ones.
I think
So you
you're
have something to write
you're
down.
gathering feedback. I think
Yeah.
it's very good. You can ignore everything I say.
No.
I'll say things and, you know. someone can-
Have you not
I'll
noticed
won't.
several of your phrases are directly in here, for sure. So there's, but,
Well, like,
okay.
Okay.
And maybe we do need to, I also want to help relook at this, Brandy, just to see about, you know, somewhere putting in this piece about building a strong foundational, like a strong foundation based in family or based in, something. Based in generations, I don't know, and it may not belong here.
It goes to the demographics where you saw that, in 2020, it was 4.7 people per household, and now it's 1.7 or something crazy. So,
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it is, it's kids moving away,
It's-
but the whole point is that you want to, and
Absolutely.
that's gonna happen.
you want
There
them to
are-
come back.
There
yeah.
are smaller families and that kind of stuff. But you also want them to come back, but you have to make a place where they can come back by having affordable housing,
yeah,
having
you do have that,
recreation.
you do have that in number 7 where it says
Yeah.
multi-generational community.
So,
Yeah, I think number 7 kind of does touch
It
on
already
it.
said, I mean,
okay,
saying explicitly multi-generational community.
Yeah.
Says that.
yeah, and then
it
in
says
the
it
housing one,
succinctly- And it says it succinctly.
Yeah.
Which is what you want in this section.
and
right?
then in the housing one, we'll definitely
Right.
call it out more
Yeah.
in more words. More words. Okay. Any other, for the visioning, and again, this is the first edit, but anything that was glaringly missing or not off the mark, I guess is, I hate to, again, say, let's point out the negative, but we need.
That
to-
is how you edit things.
It is how you edit things. Not a team building.
I always tell committees I'm much happier to see red marks all over the pages than to see blank unmarked pages.
Right.
My only suggestion on number 7,
Uh-huh.
and you can take it or leave it, but phrases like, let's see, middle of line 3, manner that aligns with our character and values.
Okay.
Mentioning character values there is almost too broad, like, I don't know if we want that right there, like, we want to be multi-generational community, we want to encourage housing. Up above is sort of, we've already said what the values are, you know, the items about, you know, natural resources and the village versus, you know, village settlement pattern. You almost open yourself up to too many things when you just throw out character and values without defining what those are.
Right.
I don't know, maybe, whereas a lot of the other ones are sort of more, you know, pathways, sidewalks, bike lanes, scenic roads, you know, it's clear of like what we're saying. And I think that number 7 works just fine without giving a caveat at this stage. And clearly the housing chapter will go into all of that. But I guess that's kind of nitpicky at this point. Being too open-ended is also not doing anything right.
Yeah, it's broad, too broad.
Right.
I agree.
Okay. Shall I stop sharing the screen here?
Yeah, I think
Okay,
we can
good.
move on from visioning.
All right.
Okay.
And let's move into economic development.
So Maynard and I kind of had a question
Sure.
we discussed today. We have, but so I guess our first question was kind of obviously what we're doing tonight. So what were other people's initial thoughts upon reading it?
On what?
Upon reading it. I'm just curious.
Anybody have some initial feedback?
I don't have anything globally. I have a couple of individual comments, but I thought it was fine. I didn't see anything that I read that I, you know, thought was grossly wrong or anything like that.
I like it.
So I think
Well said.
Maynard and I both read it and we're curious about maybe wordsmithing to adjust the tone that we caught from it. And I don't know, that's why I was curious if other people caught this. The way it's written a little bit, if I was somebody who didn't live here and was looking to move here or was looking to build a business here, part of it comes across that we're not very welcoming. So the part that we don't really want, you know, we value the character. There's parts that kind of commented almost like we don't necessarily want change. And I think if we just altered, if we
Yeah, I
wordsmithed
mean-
it a little, it would change that, just so it wouldn't quite come across that way, and it
Yeah,
would
if
just
you,
be
if
like,
you look
okay.
at the 4th paragraph under perspectives and priorities, it starts off with, there is not significant public demand for the town to take a more directive or active role. I read that and went, geez, that may be true, but I'm not sure we want to say it.
Yeah, and that's what I was saying, because when we were talking about like, what are the incentives so far?
Yeah.
Well, we've all kind of commented that the incentives really do kind of speak to that, actually, but what could we do to maybe not put it that way? Just so that people don't read it and go, oh, they don't really want business, they're not trying.
That's what it sounds like.
But then at the same time, it does say that we would like, the residents do seem to want more small businesses. And that we do have places like, you know, the interchanges, it talks about, you know, the 3 different exits we have, the potential in that area to maybe add a larger business that wouldn't take away from the rural character of the town that people enjoy. So I'm just curious, I guess we were just thinking if maybe there's like, if there's a small, of course I left all my notes out. If there's a small amount of wordsmithing that could be done to maybe alter that tone, potential tone? And maybe that was more us than others, but to be fair, Maynard and I are pretty gun ho on economic development.
Well, yeah.
But not for like big box stores either.
Right,
That's not. what
as
we're-
am I, but I think that it's mentioned either in the vision or here about, planned growth
Yes.
and targeted growth and doing it in such a way that it maintains the rural character of the town, blah, blah, blah. And I liked all those words because I think it's really important. But at the same time, we need to, my personal opinion, I think that we need to be cognizant of the fact that we need to draw more businesses into town.
And I think you're right, you can just move stuff around, like looking at the second paragraph under perspectives and priorities, right? It starts out with Enfield residents do not want.
Yeah.
If instead, if you just write about the things we have found that people do want, and then people will understand that because, that other things are not wanted because they weren't listed as being wanted.
Yeah,
And so you
Yeah.
can frame it in the positive.
Yeah.
About here's what people do want, which also gives the people who might have businesses the idea of, oh, that's a community that wants me, as
Yeah.
opposed to, oh, they don't want to become a major employer, so I should.
Yeah. Although that's what the survey said.
No, it is,
well, and
however,
that's, yeah, that's. what I was
but there
gonna-
was desire to have other types of business.
Yes. Yeah.
And so you want it, so what are we, who are we trying to communicate to those businesses, like.
Yep.
We don't want the coffee shop owner to say, oh, they don't want to employ people, I don't
Right.
want to go there. We want to say, oh, they want a coffee shop.
Yeah.
I want to go to that community.
Yeah.
And so I think that's one where it doesn't take a whole lot to.
Yep.
Rephrase that, in the positive. And like I said before, my only other comment is, I totally understand like what we're saying on, economic threats, but I don't think we should call out our neighbors specifically, even if,
Yeah.
making a statement about being a favorite Upper Valley commuter location is valuable, because that's what we are. And we want to we want to expand our favorability as a commuter location. But I don't know, but that's another one that could be sort of framed a little, neighboring communities or something, instead of calling them out specifically. I think calling out our neighbors as a threat is just kind of adversarial.
Yeah.
And unnecessary. Even though we know exactly what we're trying to say. I don't think it'll be read that way.
The other, I know you use pictures that you had access to.
Mhm.
And we were looking at that first picture of the mill. And we weren't sure that was the one we should probably go with on economic
I don't know,
development.
I liked it.
I mean, I don't
I
think
thought it was very telling.
well, yeah, I'm not sure it's the cover picture. I think it should be there. It
But
should be a picture in there.
everybody had the same reaction. Jesus, right?
Well, that's true.
And it's like, that could be, I don't know if it ever will be in my lifetime,
But
but
the
that could,
second page is good.
yeah, but it could be so incredible. It could be
Yeah.
so, I look at that picture and I go, oh my God, the possibilities.
But it's also a great one to put on like page 10. There's a black box.
48.
No, but it says inventory and trends on that one. Now
Yeah,
it
yeah.
speaks to
No,
the trend that's happened right there.
I hear you, but
But no, yeah, we're kind of like, oh, there's not maybe a more positive picture. I mean, I don't
So-
know what though, honestly.
One of the other possibilities would be, you could certainly pick something touristy and put in there. You could pick something, we could probably find a historic photo that could fit in there. The text sort of ties to the picture of the mill. It would, if you don't want to include a picture of the mill, you would probably tweak the text a little bit, but it really is a page that's sort of trying to set the context.
Yeah.
So it's that introductory piece, and it's a really nice photograph. So from just a photography point of view, it's a really good shot.
It really really nice photograph from that point of view for sure. It was, yeah,
Long lens.
it was just maybe sad. Though it does speak to what's happening, but.
Actually, I am a real sucker for old mill buildings. So you shouldn't let me pick photos necessarily if you don't want to look at photos of old mill buildings. But I'm really drawn to those buildings. So I don't think everyone looks at buildings like that and has a negative reaction.
I mean, I love it. I just love it for its possibilities.
Right, and I think
even-
that's what I'm resonating in on, is I'd like to write this chapter about like, we have to recognize who we are, and that's an okay thing. We are a bedroom community. We are not a place that is, outside of a few small sections, we're not going to be a place that, not that we don't, and I think if we could stay away from, even though, yes, the survey says we don't want, we're not conducive to our community structure is not the place for, and I'm trying to find the right words, for a large big box retailer or corporation. But I'd like to, it does read negative in a lot of ways. And I'm wondering of rewriting it from a very like, this is a place with lots of possibilities, lots of growth opportunities. There is a want for small town businesses. There is a want for, things that create community, because that's what we heard. Those are those core values. We want places that community can gather. We want, but that, and that's conducive with, and we have places, this old mill, God, if some things could get out of the way, there's such opportunity there. And I feel like that is telling of the story of Enfield. If there could just, if we could get out of the way, and being really strategic and intentional about it, and not just, and I think if we can tell that story, the opportunities, that were the motivational stuff, and that we want to be really intentional about it. And that community is at the heart of what we want, and not just fill a space to fill a space. Or, I mean, I'm more worried about more storage companies. I mean, like, dear Lord, can we have another storage unit? Like, or just something like that. I'd love to. Like, I look at the place on the hill that's now up for lease, and I'm like, why can't that be a rec center with a walking ring in there?
Oh, you're talking about.
The old roller ring.
Oh,
Turn it back into a, or how can that be?
Yeah.
There's all sorts of things that could do with it, instead of which I feel like where it's going, which is going to be storage. Like, or something, so warehousey, a warehouse. But
Yeah.
Rob, why don't you get on that?
Can you talk?
Talk to that guy.
But I think that it's like, we don't want it to become or it's not that we don't want it to become a major employment center. I think that it just is not going to be, because that's not where our community, that's not the strength of our community, right? Is
Oh, for
being,
sure.
so instead of saying that, yes, maybe the people in the survey might have identified that, but like, that's not our strength. Our strength is capturing, as I always say, the other 16 hours of people's days, not their 8 hours working time completely. I mean, some, but small business opportunities. And that, while we have limited resources, again, I don't really think we say that, call that out, but like, we are looking to get creative, maybe.
Well, and I think, so yeah, if we're not calling out, for sure, don't call out limited resources, but we do, in like the recommendations, we talk about partnering. And so maybe avoiding the limited resources, but definitely calling out the opportunities to partner with some of these programs.
Yeah, so these are
and
all
groups
opportunities.
around us, for
right.
sure.
So recommendations, we want to, we need to build more partnerships. We need to,
Well, that was the thing I was
it's
gonna mention is,
opportunities.
do we want to tie, how detailed do we want to get the recommendations? Do we want to tie it to a specific town employee or group or volunteer group? Remember, like we talked about a champion?
Yeah.
Is this,
Yes.
is this where that should go?
So Where
Nate,
that would go would actually be in the implementation chapter. So the idea would be to take these recommendations that are in the individual chapters and then build that implementation program out of those.
Perfect.
Fair enough.
Um, And I was thinking about some kind of other photos too, to go in there.
So I know this photographer.
Yeah, I know. And actually, I was told, so the
Did it?
school wants photos to be done, and I might have been a little busy last spring. So,
Is it a nice photographer? Is she pleasant?
sometimes.
She's tolerable most of the time.
She
She feels squirrely sometimes.
she has a few too many jobs.
Yeah.
How can you work into, you want the businesses and put into, get some of the art, artist things, art galleries or
Yeah.
whatever, something that's a variety of different crafts and artists and what could we do? We got the Sacred Theater, we can, we tie that into, we tied it into the having dinner and a show and
maybe some shots of the farmer's market, that, that's artsy craftsy type
Well, so
thing.
we've got like Farm Girl Finds, which
Yeah.
I think sometimes gets lost just because of its location, but it's getting known. Honestly, that aerial space is really like pottery. After we get that. But yeah, I think that's probably all in the wording too, as far as the.
I think unfortunately, and maybe this is
Maybe the
because we
shop-
haven't specifically asked a ton about arts and culture, and we're not building that chapter right now. Like, I definitely know that, but so I don't know if we've identified that. I mean, I know we all kind of know what's out there, what folks want, but I'm not sure. But I think it's that bigger thing of like small shops,
but that's,
What if we added it to the first sentence of the perspectives and priorities? We've got, cater to the local market, such as shops, galleries, restaurants. Like, what if you just put that one word there that
Yeah.
it like invokes the thought process,
yes.
but that's all we touch on, right?
okay,
And then
that's in the vision.
obviously,
Is that in the vision? No, is that?
no, the perspectives and priorities.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, I like to add it there too, because that's what I'd like to see. I mean, and we need that balance. I mean, of things. Yeah, I just,
Professional
Because that way it starts a thought process. It like plants the idea in people's heads, but then if we're gonna be expanding with a chapter on arts or does that count as recreation?
no, it should be its own
its
arts
own
and culture.
Arts and culture.
Yeah. At least we've kind of already referenced it somewhere to then be able to kind of jump off of.
about on things like professional services, which is accounting, an accountant, or those kinds of businesses going in this Copeland block. They could,
Yeah, I mean, we have those. That's the hard part. So I think, and I'm not a board member, so I'm not really biased.
they're in their
But
own-
the Enfield Village Association is mentioned in here somewhere.
Yep.
They are.
Yeah.
But like they have a whole business directory, and that lists all of those things that I don't think a lot of people know about,
I know.
honestly. And
Yeah,
actually, and
I think you're right.
and I
There's a
think
lot of
John.
So it might come into where it's like we're not a, instead of saying not a major employment center or tier like large businesses, but we are conducive and encourage small professional businesses, or we house a number of them if we can get that number, Copeland Block and different ones that are that are more, that we're home to independent and professional services kind of
Yeah.
things. And call out what's here a little bit more. I don't know.
I
'Cause
mean, you know, you've got some small manufacturing businesses scattered all over town.
Mhm.
You've got, I'm pretty sure TK Sports, which does T-shirts,
Mhm.
is in Enfield,
Yep, they're
over
next
by
door.
Whaleback.
Yeah.
And Tasco Security is there.
Yeah.
And those folks over by Proctor's store,
Oh, the ski place,
the
yeah.
ski place, I'm not sure what they do.
They used to do that out of the house.
Uh-huh. And you've got some woodworking shops, some cabinet makers.
Yeah.
What else do we have?
I mean, we have
Is
accountants that
Stern
have-
Septic in Grantham, or is that Enfield? Stern,
Is what?
Stern Septic,
Oh, I think they're,
They're in
that's
Enfield.
Enfield?
yeah.
Yeah.
That's a big
Yeah.
outfit,
Off the interstate.
yeah.
Yeah, I guess, because it is mentioned, like I said, I know Eva is mentioned in there.
Mhm. It's under resources and
Um,
programs
And I just,
on page 12.
And
I guess that was another part of the increase awareness of economic development program. No, not that one. There's,
some of these places would be good to take pictures of what's being made or people making things.
Yeah.
To fill out this section visually.
yeah, that's true. It would be great, the the unmet and future needs. Okay, but Dartford doesn't have a drone, and I feel like
Well, it's time.
that unmet and future needs, but I
Maybe,
know a
maybe,
guy,
maybe Rob could requisition you one.
right? I know a guy.
I know a guy.
Zach, get him out.
Might
of
be
his
him.
drone. Might be him.
He will let me borrow it.
Yeah.
He shouldn't, but he will. So I was just thinking it'd be great. They're so far away. So Maynard and I were just discussing that if there was a way to give people that vision, and I don't know, maybe a drone picture is good, but when you have that kind of interchange on the highway and those three exits, how far away they kind of are from downtown Enfield,
It's forever.
They're
to
way
show
away.
that we have all of this potential space, or a good chunk of potential space up there, that wouldn't have any direct effect on the village, on the way people see or look at
Well,
Enfield,
it does
but would
say that in
benefit
here.
us economically.
It
Mhm.
does say
Says
that in here.
It does say it.
Right, and so we were trying to think if there was a picture that, and I didn't know if, well, did the map
So-
work?
I would
Something
do.
like that?
I was intending to have that map on the last page, and that's one of the things that would be highlighted on the map. So hopefully by the time we meet again, you'll start seeing some maps.
You might be able to do that with Google Earth as well.
Yeah,
If I
pick
find
out
he
the-
uses Google Earth a lot for different,
Yeah.
you know, and you can just draw out and then
Can we use that in terms of copyright?
Google Earth,
Yeah,
I believe so. I don't know.
I mean, I think all their stuff has copyright notice on it, but I could be wrong.
It's a GPS, like, I mean, it's not a static picture. Google Earth, like you log in and you can zoom in on an individual property. Like she does mapping and surveying and she uses it for that all the time. So I don't know when she's putting.
Google's
together-
gonna have to sue a lot of realtors if they're gonna start enforcing their
I'm
copyright.
like, and then you can zoom out and you can get as big of an area because she does it for, she's a soil and nutrient
There's
management.
definitely
plan.
precedent for all the Google Earth tools
Yeah.
being used as public domain by businesses.
Yeah, I was
Much
gonna
less
say,
entities that are not earning money.
you know, and we put a caption under there, Google Earth, we credit them.
You know, it's interesting when you
Well, I mean,
go on Google Earth and you enter Enfield, New Hampshire, the first picture underneath would be the,
Well, I mean, it's a
Sounds like-
distraction tonight, but one thing that we may want to think about long term is having one of the Google Earth fly-throughs
Mhm.
of the town.
Yeah.
Those can look really, really nice.
Ooh.
anyway.
I just know that you can basically put in several data points and get an aerial
Yeah.
shot from their satellite. So
The-
of it. So
You used, Brenda, you used some of the survey data that you had for this, right?
Yep.
So Maynard and I might have been curious on if glamping came up.
No, it comes up from my zoning work. But that's the sort of thing, like this whole series of lodging uses. So that's one of the things that communities, the smaller communities that I work with that want to do more tourism stuff, you really have to look at the lodging side, because you're not going to make any money off of tourism if you don't have lodging in your community. And so that's something to really solidly look at, where you could make a difference to try to expand opportunities for small scale lodging. And there's sort of like this whole new world of things out there, whether Airbnb is just the tip of the iceberg of the whole new lodging economy.
that's what I'm gonna do with my mom's property.
Okay.
How did you know that? Like now
Wait,
that I'm
what do you-
staying, I'm
what do you
staying
do?
here now, and now I'm doing glamping.
Oh, on the
I want
property.
to build.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've heard 10-story high complex of housing units.
Oh, for her and her friends.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're taking over Bill Warren's property for that because we need to walk in town. I am building A-frame campsites
Ooh, that would be great.
out in the woods, and yeah, I've got a whole plan.
That's
We're
wonderful.
doing dinner club. We've got art happening.
I'll be your first customer.
You can come to dinner club.
All right.
I've always really liked
your.
yours.
Some further down and Ackworth or Olmsted.
Okay,
Sure.
like
That's a serious thing about it.
yeah, okay. I've
So-
got that I've got top full.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know if everybody.
It's hex.
Oh, I know that you had a couple notes in there with questions too, as far as
Right.
like specific underutilized properties to be discussed. And the other resources and programs to add here. So Rob, is there a way, so Eva's brought up here, and we've talked about the economic development. Do you think, and maybe this isn't something that we can state, I know, maybe that's a town manager's decision or a selectman decision, but do we want to suggest that the town have one, or that the town partner, as Eva's already existing, and maybe have some other representatives that sit on the economic development committee for Eva? I don't know, that was just, I mean,
I think,
and the many hats that you wear.
I like the idea of a town actually doing some of that.
And so I don't know, I
I
mean,
think that until you get serious about it as a town, it's not.
And
maybe
so
there's
that
a-
might be one of these implementations, is that currently, and we say, currently we don't have one, but the recommendation of this master plan is to be developing an economic, like, that like, currently,
It's one of the recommendations that the
yeah,
selectmen have to follow up on.
yeah, well, selectmen, or again, how do we find,
Or volunteer.
how do we get another volunteer board with so
Right.
many people? But I think that's it. And I mean, it's great to have Eva, but like, is there,
Well, yeah, and maybe it's just like I said, you already have people who are engaged, so it's very possible that maybe they'll just move over to a town committee or board or whatever we want to call it, and then add on, because there's not really that many people.
or some way that engages current business owners to make up part of that?
I suspect if we have a focus group that's dedicated to economic development, that we'll have one or two people that might actually be interested in sticking with it.
Mhm.
And the same would go for every other chapter that we do.
So let's overall, So this is just the first step, right? There's gonna be a lot. I think that I would like, for me personally, as far as tone, and I know I make fun of this, or I kind of not make fun, but definitely I criticize it a little bit of like writing in a positive voice when, but I think we have to write in a more positive voice that encourages people to then be positive.
Yeah,
You know, I feel like this reads fairly negative. And I'd like to find a way to say that we don't want some things without saying we don't want it. Just like our, you know, like this is more conducive, this, talk about our preferences, that if there is more large scale development, that it's in the more, it's in appropriate areas. I just kind of want a really positive spin, and like, you know, even if right now there's not an approval for public spending of money, because there's not gonna approval for public spending of money on anything, like, that, I don't know. I just kind of want to read it. I wanted to read a bit more positive so that people who are interested in a new business might see this and say, okay, they want businesses. But also people that are living here can say, hey, we want a town, because people do miss, the stuff that came out of visioning, they missed Triangle Store, they missed the soda shop, they missed when the downtown was a downtown.
They missed the
Right.
post office
They
downtown.
I'm not taking on the US post office, but they do miss having that. And how do we get back to it? And I think the only way to get back to it is to talk about it in like this positive direction. That's what's wanted, not just, you know, and talk about strategically placed things. And that will be helpful in that read.
And I think that was our kind of initial thought process
Yeah.
when we were talking today, was just if we can wordsmith it a bit to, kind of be the like, do not want to, just maybe.
I mean, I like that they're
By saying what we
concerned about
want, we
large
are saying.
businesses.
Yeah.
I think all of that, but I'd rather hit them with positive, and here are some struggles.
And did you want us to list out are there some specific underutilized properties? Were you looking for us to give you feedback on that?
Yes, so that would be helpful. So one of the reasons for calling out things of that nature in the town plan is so you can look for opportunities to do something with them. So whether it's brownfield sites or you know, places that you just want to raise awareness of, that maybe there could be some sort of regional interest in or potential funding for in the future or something like that. So that can be in here. And then just as a more global response to the conversation you have been having, I do take in and understand you're wanting to have a positive attitude in the plan, but I would caution to remember that the plan is not a promotional document. That's not its purpose. So it does need to take on the challenges. It needs to understand what the issues are, because what the plan is trying to do is actually identify those issues and figure out how to overcome them to get where you want to go. So you can't entirely ignore issues. And so we can work on the wording, but I think that is a really important component of the plan. And I think lots of communities that does sometimes that make people uncomfortable, the idea that you are actually going to publicly sort of air your laundry a bit and have a fairly candid conversation about both your assets and liabilities.
Quick question. So when you're looking for unutilized properties, is it common to name privately owned properties?
I was gonna be my exact one.
Or is it, or are we talking about just publicly owned properties? Because there's a mix of both within town.
No,
Like that old
So I'm just
mill.
trying to make sure I understand what you're looking for.
Properties.
Yeah, I don't know the story of the mill, so I don't know if that is on if there really is a redevelopment opportunity for them. But I would say it's what you see as properties that have a redevelopment opportunity. It could be private land. It could be someplace that you know of where the owner, would be interested in open in a development opportunity. It could be a place that's currently for sale, or is just sort of sitting there. It would be for sale if someone showed up and asked, that type of thing. Or it could be a site that has, like the brownfields things, it has a series of issues that if they could be resolved, the location would be potentially become marketable and usable again.
Okay, I can think of examples of all of this.
I was just thinking, do we have some of those that are not being,
Well,
like Shed
well,
Street?
so the town-owned properties on Shed Street are an obvious one.
Yeah.
The one that may not be able to be addressed, but which is very real, affecting private properties, but not specific, not naming out properties, but part of why the Enfield, the Route 4 properties aren't seeing more action is because they're in a floodway, which is impacted by, the level of the floodway is set by the dam. If you were to remove that dam, then the floodway would largely go away.
Right.
Now, that's not necessarily practical, but it is the kind of thing we could point out of, here's an opportunity, like if you do something with this dam, or maybe there's another creative solution, I don't know. Right, but the floodway is limiting the opportunity in that section of town. As far as private property, like Bobby LaCroix would love to sell some of his property just to a developer to do something with. So there are a mixture of those, of all of those that could be listed. And Bobby LaCroix's got the property on the market. He's actively trying to find someone to do something with it.
But it's, well,
No, I'm just saying, like, that's an example of a property that
Yeah.
could be viewed as underutilized. Others could view it as, a beautiful forest that we shouldn't change, but that's an example of a property that's privately held that,
Mhm.
That would be a great place to have
is,
a center or something,
I mean, I think, yeah. Well, and we've talked about it before, right? Because he doesn't have, that's the one out behind.
yeah,
Right.
right, yeah.
Yeah. And it would be great to convince him to find a number that would maybe be more appealing, but
I was just trying to understand what Randy's trying to
Yeah.
encourage us to think about. And those are the three examples that come to my mind.
I think that's an interesting one, but, taking care of that. Is there a way to change that flood?
It would take a lot more
Right.
investigation than
And-
what my knowledge of
Right.
it is.
So,
But it is definitely very real in terms of the
who
development
built the dam?
opportunities.
Army Corps of Engineers or,
Oh, no, that's a mill dam.
oh, it's a mill dam, oh, okay.
But I don't know,
Oh,
who-
yeah.
I don't know who owns it now. There may be other ways to address it through other drainage.
Sure.
Like,
Mhm.
that's a
but-
whole big,
But here-
huge problem that we're not gonna solve. But if you're talking about what are limiting factors, that's one.
So identifying something like that the floodway is constraining use and redevelopment of, one or more than one properties in your community. So you could do that in the master plan. And then that can lead down the road to doing some further engineering studies, for instance, to figure out those elevation questions in terms of what would have to happen to get the buildings elevated out of the floodway, or to otherwise protect the build, other solutions. Dam removal could be one of them, elevating buildings, things like that. But that's sort of a next step engineering study. And so one of the main purposes your plan has is it provides the supporting documentation for grant applications, both by the town and by other entities that might be wanting to do projects. So you should definitely look at the plan from that perspective and think about your recommendations from that perspective as well, in terms of what types of projects could come to the plan and find support. And that's one of the main functions of your plan.
We all want to see that Baltic Mill in some way or another. We all have different ideas for it, but I'm not sure that's something. I mean, it's a private property, so it's probably not something we can really. I don't think he'd appreciate it if we listed it
Really?
as something we
Really,
all
he
want
would
to
not
change.
appreciate it.
Yeah, he's not that
The
kind of
town
person.
should just take it over.
Um,
As wasted opportunity.
You know, he's actively making money off of his hydropower.
Right.
He owns the dam. And until he gets ready to move on to something else, whatever that may be, it's status quo.
His father had a big thing to do with it too, because he went out in a long time ago. And it was the father.
I didn't know his dad had anything to do with it.
I thought he was the owner, but he might not be now. I mean, I didn't know he was alive. So. But that's what it was, and we all went after this at one time.
Oh,
And, you know, and Tim was on a plane. before,
Yeah.
so he-
it goes nowhere then.
Oh, do you want to bring that up?
So,
Oh, no, there's a pickleball and tennis court going on.
Don't they have in the floodplain, don't they have building instructions?
There are some,
And they have to have insurance?
and they have to have flood insurance, which is incredibly expensive.
Is it?
All right, so I think we've got some ideas here. And take them or leave them, you know, this is gonna get edited. And feedback, I think Brandy, your comment that this is not a promotional thing was really spot on and good. That helps me read it a little bit better. I still, there's a couple paragraphs I'd love to see, like, many people have chosen to live here in Enfield because it's close to Cooper Valley, but we don't want to see our community become a major. I don't know. I
Right,
feel
you
like,
could flip the order of the sentences and
I
some things
feel
like
like you
that.
could
Yep.
keep the order and keep the essence. And that to me, a couple of times might just be, just soften it a little bit in a way. But we don't want to lose the fact that there are challenges, that there are things that the residents say we don't want, and identify those kinds of things. So I think that was a very good reminder. Thank you. Because that is what we're going to hit up against, is that people are going to read it and they're, I do it all the time in business or just like people take exception to something and you gotta get them over it. So I think that other resources or programs, so there's some things to think about that we can add in. There's some holes here that will get added as we go along. But I'd like to talk about the next one up is going to be transportation, right? You guys are second?
Yes.
And I know you sent it out.
I did
Okay.
a day early.
Yep. I noted down the homework assignment was received a day early. It's already in the ledger.
All right, you get brownie points.
I just wanted to get it off. my back.
Right. And so what can we do to help as a group facilitate, like when we're meeting? I want to make sure that our meetings are productive. And I mean, it's good to have these discussions and keep our brains working, especially before we go out and present this to focus groups and then the public, so that we have talked about some stuff and we know why everything's in there as it is. So I think this is valuable, but I also don't want to just, and there's going to be lots of tweaks and changes, but what is going to be just a little bit of feedback right now of maybe how to, when we tackle transportation, what's going to be our best method? I mean, I don't know what I'm trying to ask. I know what I'm trying to ask. I'm just not finding the right words. Does anybody else?
I'm
know
not
what
sure
I'm
what you're trying to How can we
what's
make it-
what's the best form of feedback that we can be giving? Is maybe
Well,
we'll
I
start
think
there.
so much of it, of the plan,
Mhm.
the transportation piece is going to depend on whatever the survey says.
Okay.
So everything that Eric and I collected up until now is in the plan and in the stuff that I sent Brandy.
Okay.
But quite honestly, I think the lion's share of what ends up in the transportation plan will probably be from the survey, which I don't know the results. So as soon as Brandy puts together the first draft, I think that we do what we did with these, get it out early
Mhm.
and see if it passes the common sense test in
Okay.
terms of what we learned
Yeah.
in all of the previous seminars and gatherings that we had.
So I think that's, and the other part that I think that's been beneficial here today is like, what's the things that are standing out to you as glaring, like, you know, red flags or, you know, calling out towns or, you know, a couple of word changes like we did with vision.
You know,
We're not getting into the line by line wordsmithing, but
the other thing that if the group are having trouble sleeping at night, take a look at the Upper Valley Lake Sunapee plan, which was tremendous.
okay.
It was tremendous. I'm reading it and I'm going, yep, yep, yep. And it was just,
The Route 4 corridor one,
They
Or-
did for, I think they did, it was
the
each
4A,
quarter.
the
didn't they?
4A one, okay.
yes, yeah, well, it
Okay.
includes everything.
That-
It's
all that, okay.
4, it's 4A, it's
One,
That was sent to us like
Shaker
2 weeks
Hill,
ago.
it's
Supposed to read it already?
everything. But they also, I like the way they present the plan. They talk about charging stations, they talk about energy, they talk about bikeways. I thought it was really well done.
That, okay, so that's also, yeah, so think about those groups that came in and visited us.
Yeah.
In our sections, because remember, like, while the energy eventually will have its own chapter, we want to make sure those are themes that are running
Yeah.
through. And I think the other place that we need to, and we haven't really focused in on it today, we can take a minute here, or we can let it come back to it, is these recommendations. Like, maybe those are some of the things we want to get a little bit, like, look at the wording of everything, but
Yeah.
like, what are the recommendations? Because eventually the action steps, the
Depend on
recommendations,
those
and the implementation is the actual core of the plan.
I think
So-
the recommendations for transportation are very clear. I
Okay.
mean, we could start them off right now. It's so obvious.
You
And-
get
and-
your
and-
turn at the next meeting.
No, but
No,
I just
when-
think, I think
but
that
I
it's
think-
gonna be,
It's one of the less complex.
yeah.
Sure,
it's very
but
simple.
as we are focusing in on helping to give the feedback now, before we send it out, I want us, like, what are we zoning in on to help in this editing process here? Seeing as today's meeting is our first time that we really are sitting around doing this as a group, you know, I don't want us to like get so busy into wordsmithing or, you know, there's no comma here, we're not, you know, but like where are the places that we're going to focus? I think looking for anything that's glaringly missing or red flags, but also maybe focusing in on the recommendations that we're making. And do those make sense with everything else that's being said? Are they tying back
And-
into stuff?
Can I chime in there, Lindsay?
Please.
Yeah. So I would say that the red flag thing is definitely, I would definitely second that. So as on an editing pass, what I would encourage you to do is to read, and you're getting both the PDF layout so you can sort of see what the product looks like and also the Word document of the text. So you can highlight anything that jumps out at you as wrong, wrongly worded, you know, whatever. And I'm certainly happy to take typos. I noticed on my second read I had my fair share of typos in the economics section. I'll have to go back in and fix, but we don't need to spend meeting time talking about that. I'm happy to take typo errata sheets by email. But so do that sort of red flag, or you know, there's something wrong here. And then the did we miss something question. Is there something that's not covered in this chapter that you think should be? And then I would, Lindsay's right on it, the recommendations really need to be looked at in detail. And you know, I'm hoping that as we proceed along, a lot of committee discussion will focus in on those, potentially making them more specific than I'm able to make them, because you'll have a little bit more local knowledge to throw at them.
Yeah, and I think those recommendations should, also kind of tie back to stuff that you're reading, but so that they make sense, right? It's the same way if you're writing a thesis or something, you give the background, you give this and this, but, if you have a recommendation that's off the chart, that's all of a sudden out of left field and you haven't given some other allusion to it, it won't make sense. So I think that, that's where, when we're having these discussions, but yeah, grammar or words and that kind of stuff, email that. We're not going to talk about it. Like, substantially, but so I want to potentially revisit at the next meeting the recommendation section of with that in mind. I don't want to do it right now, of economic development, and we'll do the whole chapter for transportation. Does that sound? So we'll just kind of relook at the recommendations in economic development. Did we find that they all had a tie back? Did they make sense? Again, if there's big wording or tone things, but not, small, there's going to be a lot of other editing eventually. And then we'll take that same, the larger view of transportation and get to the recommendations. That sounds good.
Yes.
And we are for sure gonna meet.
And we are for sure going to meet on the 27th. So, Christmas ends
That's my vacation.
11:59.
My vacation too.
My entire vacation right there.
Right there, me too.
We will be
I may
meeting on the
not- I may not show up.
27th. If you need to zoom in.
I will zoom in.
Okay.
I'll be
So any other things with,
Lindsay,
yeah,
oh, I'm sorry. I have one scheduling. I just sort of want to put it out there that I've got another community that I'm working with that's on the same nightly schedule as you guys. They actually start at 7:30. And so I join them after I leave with you, and that's fine. But they've got a public hearing coming up, and I should know after tonight exactly when that's going to be. But there may be a meeting coming down here in the next month or so that I'm going to need to probably only spend an hour with you guys.
Okay.
And then have time to get prepared for their hearing. But I'll let you know about where they set that schedule for.
yeah,
after
just let
tonight.
us know. We can always rearrange the agenda. This is sort of the standard, but we don't have to do minutes and junk at the beginning either. So we can dive right into.
Yeah, I'll keep you in the loop of the scheduling there, and so we can make sure I can get that to work. Luckily, I don't have to drive anywhere in between, so I just sit here in front of my camera.
So Brandy, with that being said, and now I know you have to leave. What are the best ways that we can be supporting you in your work? Is there are we following suit, or do we need?
I
to
think yes, the materials so far have been good. So chapters, as the subcommittees can start sending me materials and sending them along, is good. And I'm also available if you're working on materials and you sort of want to bounce some ideas off me or ask for some additional information or guidance or anything. I'm available. Just send me a message or give me a phone call, and I can help.
Great. And anybody, all right, so that's good. Anybody else here need other support? Stuff, we're all good. Okay.
Cocktails at the next meeting.
Public comment period. Is there anybody from the public? There's not seeing anybody. Anything else that we are missing at this moment? I need dinner. Sorry, I gotta go. My blood sugar is like crashing.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
All right.
All right, I see the affirmative nod from the Zoom land. All right, thank you, Brandy. She's gone. Thank
Brandy's on to
you,
our next meeting.
everybody else. Awesome work.
How many,
It's like,
how many
Should come
questions?
over to this house?
I thought, oh, yeah.
So,
Oh,
I'd love to read that, and it might be better than Lebanon.
I'm pretty sure there's two women down and
got sick and
Ulster.
has
Two
cancer.
girl.
Did you read it, or you just had a presentation? on it?
Feels fluid.
Yeah, I've been,
Can't find
so I've been
cancer.
watching,
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
the Lost Kitchen. Have you heard of them?
Feels fluid.
So it's a woman, she basically is like doing dinner for a lot of
oh,
I started very
Yeah.
exclusive. She's basically the new Alice Waters, but I'm like, I want to do that for
He's
the
doing it.
accessible. But there's this place.
I drain him.
No, it's not.
We went
Oh, wow.
I
camping.
know. And really, you know, they did a lot more imaging and.
There's obviously lots of people making yurts for these.
It was a really, yeah,
Right here in the country.
right, yeah.
That's the reason.
That's why.
So like.
Because I like this idea, my biggest thing, of course, as soon as I said it, Mom's like,
Here, locally?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
here.
And
She
I
was
was
like,
like,
fire, I
they
did
don't do
hard.
Uh-huh.
But I found somebody.
Yeah, camping and having fire rings, and I was like, I've been dreaming of fire.
I don't
Yeah,
even
that's-
know.
And it's not.
There's this place, but they've got these beautiful A-frames, and then they've got this really nice, like, it's on, it's lamping, it's like, and they basically deliver
I don't know what's gonna
a
happen.
carafe of coffee and a French press of coffee,
And I
scones,
just
and,
brought
you
it,
know,
that's right away.
and,
Couldn't do
you
anything.
me up.
can order a basket to the steaks and whatever, just
Yeah,
like, you know,
just
campfire, but.
Huh?
Get just
It's
two.
a thing, like,
Yeah.
do that in dry summer.
If they don't stay in.
And these campsites, without like, without fires.
So I couldn't go.
Every campground's filled out.
Lee went.
Yeah, now they're friends.
Uh-huh.
So after the election, we had a bonfire, and I called, I got the fires, Mark Mills, my neighbor, put a little too much gasoline, or
If you
it was a
could find
fireball.
time.
But like,
towards the
like,
end
they,
of this
they could see it from Route
would be
4.
better.
Yeah. Next time you use diesel, it's much better.
Is that possible?
And then, sure enough, Fred showed up, and he was like, Lindsay,
Or kerosene.
like,
You know,
I was afraid we were gonna burn our trees down.
I don't know.
We've always been overly excited about that.
About what? I'm sorry.
Fire.
Oh,
About controlling people's.
Campfires.
Yeah. I mean, that's, like, that's, we've got the 20 acres, like, start with a
Okay.
few, but I'm like, how do you do campfires, you know? I mean, nice clear spot, a good,
Campground that has them.
right.
Just have a good fire, you know what I
Have a
mean?
really good
Or
fire
give me a
room,
phone
And make sure it's
call.
out.
provide them with water.
Okey-doke.
All right, thank you.
Good.
Oh, I know.
And despite what they say, dispatch does not want you to call them,
So,
to tell you. tell
to
them that
me,
you're
honestly,
burning.
that's super confusing.
They do not want that.
Yeah, my mom was not sure that Fred really cared. He
Very
just
good drone.
trying to convince me. So this is
Yeah,
these
so
like,
Randy had mentioned
they have
that, she's
this
like, you know,
huge place, they do all this stuff, but that's like these A-frames,
Yeah.
like, just these overnights,
You get until tomorrow.
and they do, like,
I'm going home to make my list.
little A-frame cabins,
Yeah.
like,
My nephew
Yeah.
has one. It's the coolest thing.
and just getting people to
They're
be like,
expensive though.
here, like, this is where you're staying. I'm not gonna have
Oh,
access. So-
that is luxurious.
Right, exactly.
My daughter-in-law went to one with her girlfriend.
Yeah, so
And
like,
they were
I find
tenting
your
yeah,
French
like,
legends again
yeah,
on,
no, I wanna,
Thanks.
tenting in
Did you really?